At my father's funeral, my sister, not even hiding her smile, whispered, "I've been waiting for this day. Now everything will be mine." Then, loudly enough for everyone to hear, she added, "And you loser, he left you nothing." I stood there clenching my fist as the lawyer entered with a worn envelope in his hands. He inserted a flash drive into his laptop, and my father's face appeared on the screen, uttering only 3 words. The rain drummed on the black canopy covering the grave. The drops dripped down, as if the sky were crying with me. I could barely squeeze out my own tears. A daze gripped my whole body as the priest spoke the last words about my father. "And may the soul of Robert Kincaid, loving father and successful businessman, rest in peace." The priest closed the Bible and nodded to my sister and me. Lorraine stepped forward to toss a handful of earth onto the dark cherry-lacquered casket. Her perfectly styled blonde hair didn't muss even in the rain, and her black designer dress emphasized her slim figure. At 36, my older sister looked like a magazine cover model. She sobbed theatrically, covering her face with a lace handkerchief, and I was the only one who noticed that her shoulders weren't shaking with sobs. When it was my turn, my legs were barely obeying me. My palm clutched the cold, wet earth, and I slowly unclenched my fingers over the coffin. "Goodbye, Daddy." People began to disperse, and I was left standing by the grave, unable to move. My simple black skirt was soaked with rain, my hair stuck to my face, but I didn't care. "Can't you even cry properly?" Lorraine whispered, coming up behind me so close I could feel her breath. Always been weird. No emotions, like a robot. I was silent. In 32 years of living in my older sister's shadow, I'd gotten used to her barbs. "I've been waiting for this day," she continued, a faint smile on her face. "Everything will be mine now." Her voice changed, becoming louder as she spoke. "And to you, loser, he left nothing." I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. "Not here. Not now. Not at my father's funeral." "Miss Kincaid?" An unfamiliar voice interrupted our one-sided conversation. A middle-aged man in a gray suit approached us, holding a tattered brown envelope. The rain had intensified, and he had to cover it with the hem of his jacket. "I'm Frederick Jennings, your father's attorney. My condolences. Mr. Kincaid left specific instructions regarding the reading of the will." "I'm Lorraine Kincaid." My sister instantly switched into business mode, extending her hand. "We can discuss all the details in the car. Evi," she nodded in my direction, "is my younger sister." "It's nice to meet you both." The lawyer nodded. "According to your father's will, the will must be read immediately after the burial. Are you able to view the videotape?" "The videotape?" Lorraine was surprised. "What videotape?" "Your father recorded a video message," Jennings explained, pulling a flash drive out of an envelope. "He insisted you see it right after the ceremony." "There's a laptop in my car," Lorraine said quickly. "Let's go." Lorraine's black Mercedes was closest to the cemetery gate. The 3 of us climbed inside, escaping the rain. My sister pulled a compact laptop out of the glove compartment and reached impatiently for a flash drive. "Allow me," the lawyer said politely but firmly. He inserted the flash drive and launched a single video file. My father's face appeared on the screen. My heart sank at the sight of his thin face and sunken eyes. Cancer had given him no chance in the last few months, but even as he died, he maintained a stern, strong-willed look. "Lorraine, Evelyn." My father's voice sounded weaker than I remembered, but it was still strong. "If you're watching this video, I'm no longer with you. I don't have time for long speeches, so I'll get right to the point." He paused, and I thought he was looking right at me through the screen. "Lorraine, you've always been strong and ambitious. You've accomplished a lot, and I know you can handle any challenge." My sister smiled smugly. "As for the inheritance," Father paused again. "I'm transferring the bulk of the property, including the controlling stake in the company, to the board of directors for 6 months." "What?" Lorraine exclaimed. "There must be some mistake." "At the end of that period," the father continued, as if anticipating his eldest daughter's reaction, The inheritance will be distributed according to the additional instructions I left with Mr. Jennings. My father shifted his gaze, as if addressing me alone. Evie. His voice softened. Find the truth, Evie. The screen went blank. That's it? Lorraine slammed the laptop shut in fury. 6 months of waiting? And what was this find the truth nonsense? I sat stunned. In all the years, my father had rarely addressed me directly, and now, even after his death, he had left me with mystery instead of clarity. Mr. Kincaid left additional instructions, Jennings said calmly, taking a folded piece of paper out of the envelope. For the next 6 months, the company will continue to operate under the direction of the board of directors. Miss Lorraine, you will retain your position as CFO. Your personal accounts and assets remain at your disposal. What about the house? Miss Lorraine asked demandingly. The family mansion is temporarily frozen. No one can sell it or substantially alter it until the final distribution of the inheritance. Lorraine leaned back in her seat with her arms crossed over her chest. This is absurd, she blurted out. I'm going to contest this will. My father was clearly out of his mind when he made it. I'm afraid that will be difficult to prove, the lawyer said gently. I have all the necessary medical reports on Mr. Kincaid's capacity at the time he made the will. He turned to me. Miss Evelyn, your father left something for you. He pulled a small envelope from his inside jacket pocket and handed it to me. Inside was an antique bronze key with an ornate head. What is it? I asked, looking at the unusual object. I'm not authorized to disclose that information. The lawyer smiled with the corners of his lips. Your father said that you should find the answer yourself. Fine, Lorraine snorted. Now we have a treasure hunt quest. Dad always loved those mind games. I remained silent, clutching the key in the palm of my hand. It was heavier than it looked, as if it carried the weight of unspoken words and unfulfilled promises. There is something else, Jennings added, looking at me. Your father told me to tell you that he had more than a material inheritance in store for you. He believed you would know what to look for and where to look. Lorraine irritably opened the car door. If that's all, Mr. Jennings, I'd like to go home. The day has been exhausting. Of course, the lawyer nodded. I'll contact you both shortly to discuss current affairs. As he got out of the car, Lorraine turned to me. Her eyes, as blue as my father's, now seemed icy. Don't think it makes any difference, she hissed. Whatever my father is up to, I'm not going to let you get in my way. I'm not trying to compete with you, Lorraine, I said quietly. I never have. That's your problem, Evie. She started the engine. You've never fought for anything. That's why you've always lost. The drive from the cemetery to my apartment was a long silence. Lorraine dropped me off at the driveway without even saying goodbye. As I watched her Mercedes disappear around the corner, I felt a strange emptiness inside. My father was dead, and with him the last thread that connected my sister and me. My one-room apartment greeted me with silence. No elaborate interiors like Lorraine's house, just bookshelves along the walls and an old plaid on the couch. I took off my wet clothes, turned on the kettle, and sat by the window, staring out at the rain. Memories came flooding back without warning. Here I am, 12, showing my father an excellent grade in literature. He nods, but his attention has already turned to Lorraine, who has just won the school math Olympiad. See, Evie, he says, your sister knows what's important for success. Here I am, 16 and timid about wanting to study art in college. Art doesn't feed, Evelyn, father replies. Lorraine chose economics. That's the practical approach. He wasn't cruel or cold. He just always expected certain results. Lorraine met his expectations. I didn't. She was like her father, determined, calculating, pragmatic. I was more like my mother, whom I barely remembered. She died when I was 5. College was my first real liberation. I chose literature over business, which finally disappointed my father. You're choosing the path of mediocrity, Evelyn, he said then. That was the last time he called me by my full name rather than the diminutive Evie my mom used. After college, I didn't return to the family mansion, but got a job as a school librarian and rented this small apartment. My father never came to visit me, and our rare meetings at family gatherings were always strained. Lorraine, meanwhile, had a brilliant career in her father's company, becoming his right-hand woman. She married a successful lawyer, divorced after 3 years, and had devoted herself fully to the business ever since. Every Christmas, she never missed an opportunity to remind me of my modest accomplishments. I took the key out of the envelope and scrutinized it again. The strange pattern on the head vaguely reminded me of something, but I couldn't figure out what. Find the truth, Evie. What did you mean, Dad? The kettle boiled, snapping me out of my reverie. I made tea and opened my laptop, deciding to check my email. Among the work emails, I found a message from Mr. Jennings, sent just 15 minutes ago. Dear Miss Kincaid, once again, please accept my condolences for your loss. Your father was an outstanding man and a client of our firm for many years. I realize that today's announcement may have raised questions for you. Unfortunately, I cannot provide all the answers at once, following your father's instructions. However, he asked me to convey to you that the key to the truth lies where the summer began. I hope this clue is clear to you. If you have any questions, I am always at your service. Sincerely, Frederick Jennings, Senior Partner, Jennings & Associates. I reread the message several times. Where summer began. Suddenly it hit me. A summer home. The old cottage on the lake where we'd gone every summer before Mom died. Dad had kept it, but we'd stopped going there. I remembered the house vaguely, like a distant dream. The creaky floorboards, the smell of pine trees, the splash of water by the dock. I quickly opened the map on my phone. Pine Lake was a 3-hour drive. If I left early in the morning, I could get there by noon. For the first time in a long time, I felt something akin to excitement. Whatever my father was trying to tell me, I had to find out. Not for the inheritance, but for the answers he'd never given in his lifetime. I put the key on the bedside table and lay down, but sleep wouldn't come. I kept thinking of my father's last words. Find the truth, Evie. Why now, after all these years of silence, had he decided to speak to me? And what truth should I find? I woke up at first light. My head felt heavy after a sleepless night, but the decision was ripe. Today, I would head to the summer house. Quickly packing my backpack with the essentials, I drank my coffee and hailed a cab to the bus station. My old Ford had been in the shop for a week. As the bus pulled out of town, I looked through the photos on my phone, some old shots of the summer house, a 2-story wooden cottage with a wide veranda, a dock going into the lake, tall pine trees all around, a place where we were once happy. The drive took almost 4 hours. When I finally got off at the Pine Lake stop, it was almost noon. I flagged down a cab, an old pickup truck with chipped paint. The Kincaid house, by the North Shore, I told the driver. The Kincaids? He turned around. No one had been there in a while. Are you a relative? I'm Evelyn Kincaid, Robert's daughter. Oh my God, little Evie. The driver smiled. I didn't recognize you. I'm Harry, remember? I used to take your family fishing. A vague memory came back to me. A big boat, my father's laughter, as he taught Lorraine and me how to cast. Daddy died a week ago, I said quietly when he asked me about my father. I'm sorry, baby. He was a good man, though he'd kept to himself the last few years. The house looked smaller than I remembered, and much more abandoned. The paint on the walls was faded, and the porch steps were rotten in several places. Your father came here a few times a year, but he didn't hire anyone to take care of it, Harry explained. The bronze key fit the front door lock perfectly. Inside, the house greeted me with musty air and silence. I opened the windows, letting in fresh air and sunlight. The furniture was covered in white sheets like ghosts of the past. There were framed photographs on the mantelpiece. I took one of them, all 4 of us on the dock, me about 4 years old, Lorraine 8. Mom is holding my hand, her long dark hair fluttering in the wind. Dad has his arm around Lorraine's shoulders, his face younger and softer than I remembered in recent years. I begin to methodically look around the house. There was nothing unusual in the living room, kitchen, or bedrooms on the first floor. I went up to the second floor, where there were 3 more bedrooms and my father's small study. The study caught my eye immediately. Unlike the other rooms, it was dust-free. The books on the shelves were in perfect order, and the desk was empty. My father had been here recently and had cleaned the room thoroughly. I walked around the room, running my hand over the bookshelves. Classics, business reference books, a few photo albums. The desk drawers were empty. Disappointed, I sat down in my father's chair and looked around the room. And then my gaze fell on the bookshelf opposite. Among the perfectly aligned spines, one protruded about an inch. Moby Dick was my father's favorite book. I reached over and pulled on the spine. The book didn't budge, but the shelf clicked slightly and pitched forward. I pulled on the edge of the shelf and it moved aside, revealing a small niche in the wall. Inside was a stack of leather-bound notebooks and a metal box. With trembling hands, I pulled out the top notebook and opened it. My father's diary. The first entry was dated January 2010, almost 15 years ago. Evie graduated from college. She turned down the place in the company I had prepared for her. Lorraine says I'm putting too much pressure on her, that I need to give her room for self-actualization. Maybe she's right. I flipped through the diary further. March 12, 2011. Evie didn't show up for my birthday. Lorraine said she was too busy with her new job to spend time with her family. I looked up in bewilderment. I had missed my father's birthday because I was in the hospital with appendicitis. I had called home and the housekeeper was supposed to tell my father. Didn't he know? Or Lorraine. The metal box was locked with a small lock. The bronze key fit perfectly and the lid opened. Inside were stacks of papers, a flash drive, and an envelope with my name on it. I opened the envelope to a letter from my father. Dear Evie, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I have not been a good father to you. I realized it too late. I let work, ambition, and poor judgment come between us. But worst of all, I believed the lies and manipulations. Go through these documents and diaries. They tell a story I realized too late. You've always been stronger than I thought. It's time for you to prove that to yourself and to others. Love, Dad. I started going through the paperwork. Company financial statements for the last 5 years with my father's notes, mismatch in accounts, check transactions, double bookkeeping, copies of emails between Lorraine and clients, contract dates changed, amounts inflated. It was starting to get dark outside the window when I realized there was no food or electricity in the house. I had to go to the village Harry had mentioned. There was a full-figured woman in her 50s behind the counter at the store. What can I do for you? She asked. I need candles, matches, water, and food, I said. And, do you have a photocopier? There's a copier in the library, but it's closed until morning. Are you staying at the Kincaid house? Yes, I'm Robert's daughter, Evelyn. I'm Judy Parker. She held out her hand. Your mom and I were friends. My condolences. Robert came to visit 2 months ago, she added. Is there no electricity in the house? I can get Marcus to come over. He's our local handyman. I'd appreciate it. He lives across the street from the library, the blue house with the workshop. The library was a small white building at the end of the street. Across the street was a blue house with a sign that said, Marcus's Auto Shop. I opened the gate and headed toward the garage, where the sound of a tool was coming from. A man of about 35 was leaning over a motorcycle. His dark hair was gathered into a ponytail, his hands covered in machine oil. Excuse me, I called out. Are you Marcus? He lifted his head and stared at me with recognition in his gaze. Yes, I'm Marcus Reed. Can I help you? My name is Evelyn Kincaid. Judy said you might be able to help with the electricity. Marcus froze, then nodded. Evie Kincaid. You don't remember me? We knew each other as kids. My mom worked as a housekeeper at your house during the summers. A vague image of the boy who taught me to build ships out of bark rose to mind. Stamps? I asked uncertainly. The same Marky who pushed me off the pier when I was 7? He laughed, and his face transformed, suddenly familiar. You bet yourself you could swim, and then I saved you. And Lorraine told my father that you tried to drown me on purpose. I remembered how my father had forbidden me to play with that bully. Marcus's smile faded. Yeah, your sister never liked me. Well, let's see what's wrong with the electricity. As we walked toward the house, Marcus talked about the settlement, how he'd come back here after college and the army, how he'd opened a workshop. What brought you here after all these years? He asked. My father died a week ago. He left me a mystery. I'm trying to solve it. I'm sorry about your father, Marcus said quietly. He was a complicated man, but fair in his own way. Have you been in touch with him? For the last 2 years, he'd come to the shop every time he came here. First to fix his car, then he'd linger, talk. Seems he was lonely. Back at the house, Marcus quickly found the problem. The main switch in the basement was off. 10 minutes later, the house was filled with light. Now you have light, hot water, and a working stove, he said as he gathered his tools. Thank you. I held out the money, but he shook his head. Don't. Consider it a favor to an old friend. When Marcus left, I returned to my father's journals. Page after page revealed a history I didn't even know I had. Lorraine had been vilifying me in my father's eyes for years, with stories of non-existent problems, disrespect, and even a supposed drinking problem. She intercepted my emails and calls, forgetting to relay messages. Manipulated his perceptions to the point where he saw me as nothing but a disappointment. But the most shocking thing was in the records of the last 2 years. My father began to suspect Lorraine of financial fraud, double bookkeeping, bogus contracts, kickbacks from suppliers. He didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was piling up. March 20th, 2024 year. Found final confirmation today. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, registered to front men but managed by Lorraine. How could I have been so blind? I was building an empire for my daughters, and she stole from under my nose. And worst of all, she lied to me about Evi all these years. I checked. Evi never turned down my invitations. She never said those horrible things that Lorraine told me. I lost my daughter because of my own stupidity. Tears streamed down my cheeks. He was going to confront Lorraine, but the diagnosis of inoperable cancer changed his plans. Instead of a direct confrontation, he decided to leave me a path to the truth. The last entry was dated a month earlier. I don't know if I will have the courage to personally tell Evie the truth before I die. I've been a bad father for so long that I don't deserve her forgiveness. But I will leave her with all the evidence and a path to the truth. Hopefully, it will help her reclaim what is rightfully hers, and maybe find the strength to forgive me. I closed the journal, feeling the bitterness growing inside, mixed with determination. All my life, I had let others define my worth. I'd accepted the role of the quiet, insecure little sister who never lived up to expectations. I allowed Lorraine to control my life, to push me away from my father, to take away my voice in the family. I thought it was my destiny to always remain in the shadows. But now, amidst the evidence of years of deception, I felt something change inside. Anger? Yes. Pain? Absolutely. But also determination. Determination to no longer be a pawn in someone else's game. Find the truth, Evie, my father said. I found it, though it was more bitter than I could have imagined. Now I had to decide what to do with it. And for the first time in my life, I was going to make that decision on my own, without looking at other people's expectations. In the morning, I woke up to the sound of an incoming text message. My phone showed 5 missed calls from Lorraine, and one message, "Where are you? Call me back right away." I took a deep breath. I needed to get back to the city, to copy the documents I'd found, and prepare to talk to my sister. I called Harry, and he agreed to drive me to the bus station in an hour. Carefully putting the most important journals and documents into my backpack, I took one last look around the house. On the desk in my father's study was an old camera, my childhood passion that I'd abandoned because of Lorraine's taunts. On a sudden impulse, I put it in my backpack. Marcus was waiting at the gate, leaning on his bike. "Are you leaving?" he asked. "Did you find what you were looking for?" "Yes, but it's a start." I looked at him gratefully. "Thank you for your help." "If you need anything else." He handed me a business card with a phone number. On the bus, I flipped through the pictures I'd taken on my phone, pages from diaries, financial statements, letters. The evidence was coming together, but I needed someone who could help me understand the legal intricacies. Back in town after lunch, the first thing I did was stop by the copy center. After making digital copies of all the documents, I emailed them and saved them on 2 flash drives. I kept one for myself and sent the other to Mr. Jennings with a courier. As I walked up the stairs to my apartment, I could already tell by the noise that Lorraine was inside. The door was ajar, and there was the sound of drawers being pulled out of the room. "What are you doing in my apartment?" I asked, entering. Lorraine turned around abruptly. Her perfect hair was disheveled, and her eyes read something between rage and panic. "Where have you been?" She took a step toward me. "And where are the papers you took from your father's house?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb!" Her voice got higher. "I know you went to the summer house. Judy called her cousin who works in our office. And that gives you the right to break into my apartment?" I was trying to be calm, even though my heart was pounding. "I'm your sister and the CEO of the company. I have a right to know what you're up to." She crossed her arms over her chest. "Give me the documents, Evie. This is confidential corporate information." "You mean proof of your fraud?" I didn't expect to say it out loud. Lorraine turned pale, but quickly pulled herself together. "What are you talking about? What kind of fraud?" "Double bookkeeping, offshore accounts, forging my father's signature." I looked her straight in the eye. "He knew, Lorraine. He found out before he died." "You're crazy," she laughed nervously. "This is ridiculous. Do you have any idea how ridiculous your accusations sound? I have proof, and copies have already been sent to a safe place." Her face contorted with anger. "What do you want? Money? A position in the company? Name your price, Evie." "I want the truth," I said firmly. "And justice." "Justice!" Lorraine laughed. "Where was your justice when you quit the family business and hid among your books? I spent years building something you're ready to tear down overnight. You lied to me my whole life, lied to my father about me, stole my relationship with him." My voice shook, but I kept going. "And now you're stealing from the company." "I was protecting my interests," Lorraine blurted out, and then bit her lip as she realized what she'd said. There was a heavy silence. "Get out of my apartment," I said finally, "and prepare for the consequences." "You have no idea what you're dealing with." Lorraine grabbed her bag. "This isn't going to end well for you, sis." When the door slammed behind her, I sank slowly onto the couch, my whole body shaking. For the first time in my life, I was openly confronting my sister, and it was both terrifying and liberating. The next morning, my phone was ringing off the hook. The principal of the school where I worked demanded that I come immediately. When I arrived, he greeted me with an icy expression. "Miss Kincaid, we have received some very disturbing information," he began as soon as I sat down. "We've been informed that you have a drinking problem and have recently undergone treatment for addiction." "What?" I couldn't believe my ears. "That's a total lie." The source of the information asked to remain anonymous, but he is a highly respected person in our community. The director looked embarrassed. "Besides, there are reports of your emotional instability after your father's death." "That's my sister." I shook my head. "She's trying to discredit me." "I'm afraid we're going to have to suspend you until we find out what's going on." He handed me a piece of paper. With half pay, I walked out of the school feeling like the ground was slipping from under my feet. Lorraine was quick and ruthless. Half a paycheck meant I could barely pay my rent. The phone rang. Marcus's number. "How are things going in the big city?" he asked. Suddenly I was crying, letting all the tension out. Marcus listened patiently to my rambling story. "Come back to Pine Creek," he suggested. "I have a guest room. Here you can deal with all of this in peace." "I can't just run away." "This isn't running away, Evie," he objected gently. "It's a strategic retreat. You need a safe place to gather your thoughts." After some hesitation, I agreed. After gathering the essentials and paying a month's rent in advance, I headed back to the bus station. Marcus met me in an older pickup truck. His house was cozier than I expected, a spacious living room with a fireplace, a large kitchen, and 3 bedrooms. Pictures of motorcycles and lake scenery hung on the walls. "You said you had a complicated story," I remarked over dinner. "Would you tell it?" Marcus was quiet for a moment, looking down at his plate. "After high school, I went to college, but I didn't have enough money, so I joined the army as a contractor. 2 years in Afghanistan," he said quietly. "Came back a different man. PTSD, alcohol problems, a few bad decisions that led to even worse consequences." He rolled up his sleeve, showing the long scar on his forearm. "A drunken bar fight. Nearly died from blood loss. That was my turning point. Came back here to my mom, started over. Motorcycles saved me. Handwork, concentration, something tangible that could be fixed, as opposed to, from everything else, I finished for him. Yeah, he nodded. So I understand what it's like to have your life suddenly turned upside down. The next day, we met Mr. Jennings at a small cafe in a nearby town. The lawyer scrutinized the documents I'd sent him. These are serious allegations, Miss Kincaid, he said. And unfortunately, the evidence is very compelling. Your father has done an impressive job of gathering information. What can I do? Legally, you have several avenues. He pulled out a notepad. We can file a formal complaint with the company's board of directors, or we could go directly to law enforcement and report fraud. But I'd recommend a third way. What's that? Your father has scheduled a board meeting in 2 weeks to finalize the inheritance. I suggest you use that time to gather additional evidence and present it at the meeting. When I returned to Marcus's house, I found the door cracked and the inside a complete mess. All the drawers had been pulled out. Things were strewn about. Damn it, Marcus said, looking around at the mess. Is this your sister? Probably people she hired. I looked through my things. They were looking for documents, but they didn't find any. I keep everything to myself. We should call the police. And say what? That my rich sister hired people to find documents to prove her financial crimes? I shook my head. Without direct evidence, it would look like a family squabble. Then you need to defend yourself in other ways. Marcus rubbed his chin thoughtfully. I have an idea. The next day, we returned to the summer house. Marcus installed a simple but effective alarm system, and I continued to study my father's papers. The metal box revealed another folder I hadn't noticed before. It contained legal documents signed by my father in duplicates with markedly different signatures. Look, I showed Marcus. This is Dad's original signature, and this is what Lorraine used. It's not a big difference, but it's there. And this is on official documents? Yes, on contracts and bank orders. I looked at the dates. Starting when my father became seriously ill and less likely to be in the office. That evening, I got a call from Mr. Jennings. Miss Kincaid, I'm afraid we have a problem. His voice sounded concerned. Your sister has filed a petition with the court to declare you incompetent because of the psychological trauma of your father's death. She's seeking temporary guardianship of you and your finances. I felt nausea coming up my throat. She can't do that. Technically, she could try. She has statements from concerned friends, and even a note from the psychiatrist who supposedly counseled you. The lawyer sighed. It's a dirty game, but we can resist. The main thing, do not give in to provocation. After the conversation, I went out onto the veranda. The lake shimmered in the moonlight, and this peace seemed so far from the war my sister had declared on me. She's trying to declare me crazy, I said to Marcus as he joined me, to take control of my finances and keep me from speaking at the council meeting. She's afraid of you, he said simply. For the first time in her life, Lorraine is afraid of her quiet little sister. That's a good sign. I looked at him in surprise. A good sign? It means you're on the right track, and she knows it. In the morning, I woke up with unexpected clarity in my head. No more fear, no more doubt. I gathered all the paperwork and sat down to draw up a detailed plan of action for the board meeting. Lorraine could take away my job, threaten my reputation, even try to have me declared incompetent. But she couldn't take away the truth I'd finally found. And she couldn't break the resolve that grew in me with each new blow she struck. The last week before the board meeting flew by like a day. Mr. Jennings and I worked tirelessly to organize the evidence against Lorraine. The lawyer was impressed with the thoroughness of my father's paperwork. Your father was a very methodical man, he remarked as we sorted through the papers in the living room of Marcus's house. He had gathered almost irrefutable evidence of financial fraud. I nodded, thumbing through copies of bank statements. You know what the weirdest part was? According to his journals, he'd begun to suspect Lorraine as early as 3 years ago. Why hadn't he done anything about it? Mr. Jennings tapped his pen on the desk thoughtfully. Perhaps he needed to be absolutely sure. Or, he looked at me. Perhaps he was waiting for the right moment. What moment? For you to be ready. That thought kept me going all evening. Was my father really waiting for me to confront Lorraine on purpose? Did he want me to finally learn to fight for myself? The next morning, while sorting through the remaining boxes from the summer house, I found an old photograph. It showed my father and me standing on the dock. I was about 10 years old, holding a camera and smiling broadly. My father had his hand on my shoulder, and there was pride in his gaze. I remembered that day. My mom had recently died, and it was the first time Dad had taken Lorraine and me to the lake without her. I was withdrawn, hardly speaking. That's when Dad gave me this camera. So you could see the world in a new way. It was one of the few times I felt his genuine concern. I pulled out the very camera I had taken from the summer house. An old film Leica. Amazingly, it still worked. On a sudden impulse, I went outside and started taking pictures. The lake in the morning mist, the old pier, the reflection of trees in the water. That's what Marcus caught me doing when he came back from the store. "I didn't know you were into photography," he said, setting the bags on the porch. "I used to." I put the camera down. Then I gave it up. Lorraine said it was a waste of time. "What do you think?" I thought about it. I liked it. The world looks different through a lens. You see details you'd normally miss. And you can capture a moment, preserve it forever. "Then why not go back to it?" Marcus said simply. That same day, I found a store in the village with photo supplies and bought some film. Photography became a kind of therapy for me. Every morning I went out to the lake and took pictures of the sunrise, then went to explore the surroundings. Gradually, I began to notice how my perception was changing. I became more attentive. I began to see the beauty in small things. At the same time, I decided to completely change my appearance. All my life, I had been wearing discreet clothes, trying not to attract attention, as if trying to become invisible. Now, browsing through old magazines in the library, I had chosen a completely different style, one that was more colorful and confident. In the hairdresser's shop in the neighboring town, I decided to cut my hair short instead of my usual long hair, which I had always gathered in a modest ponytail. The hairdresser, an energetic middle-aged woman, nodded approvingly. "It's about time, honey. You have beautiful cheekbones that need to be emphasized." Looking in the mirror at my new reflection, I hardly recognized myself. The short hair opened up my face, making it more expressive. I looked stronger. When I got back to Marcus's house, he stood in the doorway for a moment. "Wow," was all he said. "That really suits you." I smiled embarrassedly, but inside I felt a wave of confidence. This was just the beginning. 2 weeks before the board meeting, I reached out to Emily, my best friend from college, with whom we'd lost contact years ago. This was partly due to my reticence, partly because Lorraine had called her one day and told her in confidence about my fictitious drinking problems. To my surprise, Emily was delighted by my call. "Evie, I always knew that all this talk about your drinking was nonsense. You're the most sober person I know." We met at a cafe downtown. Emily was now working as an editor at a small publishing house and was married to a university professor. "You look amazing," she said, looking at my new haircut and clothes. "Something has changed in you, and not just in appearance." "A lot has changed," I told her briefly about the inheritance situation, omitting the nastier details about Lorraine. "I always thought your sister was a bitch," Emily said frankly. "Remember when she accidentally spilled wine on my prom dress? We talked for hours. Emily gave me a big hug before she left. Don't disappear again, you hear? And if you need help with this legal battle, my husband is friends with several attorneys." I returned to Marcus's house, feeling like I'd regained a part of myself that I'd lost long ago. But the most difficult change was in my relationship with Marcus himself. We spent most of our time together, cooking dinner, watching old movies, walking along the lake. He would tell me about his travels after the army. I would share stories from the library. One evening, as we sat on the dock watching the sunset, Marcus took my hand. It was a simple gesture, but I instinctively jerked away. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "No, I should be the one apologizing." I shook my head. "I'm just not very good at trusting people." "I understand." He looked at the water. "When someone close to you betrays you, it's hard to open up again." "It's not just Lorraine," I admitted. "There was this guy in college. He was dating me to get access to my father and his connections. When I found out, it really hurt." Not all people are like that, Evie. I know. It just takes time. He nodded and didn't try to take my hand again, but something changed between us that night, a rapport that hadn't been there before. The day before the board meeting, Mr. Jennings and I did a final rehearsal of my speech. All the evidence was neatly organized into folders, and a presentation with key facts was prepared. "You're ready, Miss Kincaid," the lawyer said. "The important thing is to remain calm, no matter what happens. Your sister will try to get you to lose your temper." "I won't give in," I said confidently. I'd let her manipulate me for too long. That evening, I reread the last pages of my father's diary. One entry caught my eye. I always thought Lorraine was the strong one and Evie the weak one. But now I realize I was wrong. Evie has an inner strength that her sister doesn't have. Lorraine achieves her goals at any cost, stepping over others. Evie, on the other hand, retains her humanity and principles. It's not a weakness, it's a special kind of strength. I wish I'd realized it so late. Tears came to my eyes, but they weren't tears of bitterness, but rather of acceptance. Father had seen me for who I was, albeit at the very end. Now it was time to show that strength to others. The morning of the board meeting was sunny. I wore the navy blue suit I'd bought especially for the occasion. Marcus drove me to the company office, a tall glass building in the downtown business district. "I'll wait for you here," he said, stopping the car. "Whatever happens, remember, you've already won. You've found your truth and your voice." I took a deep breath and got out of the car. Mr. Jennings was waiting for me in the lobby. "All the board members are here," he said. "Your sister is there, too." When we entered the conference room, all the chatter died down. There were 8 board members sitting around a long table, and I recognized several of my father's longtime partners among them. Lorraine sat at the head of the table, flawless in a cream suit and perfect makeup. When she saw me, she raised an eyebrow slightly, but said nothing. "Ladies and gentlemen," began the older man, whom I remembered as an old friend of my father's, Gerald Whitmore. "We are gathered here today to discuss the distribution of the assets of Kincaid Industries according to Robert Kincaid's will. But I'm informed that we have an additional item of business on the agenda. Miss Evelyn Kincaid, you have the floor." I stood up, feeling my heart pounding. "Dear members of the board," I said, my voice sounding more confident than I expected. "I came here today not only as Robert Kincaid's daughter, but also as someone who had discovered serious financial irregularities in the company's operations." A whisper ran through the room. Lorraine straightened in her chair, her eyes narrowed. "Before he died, my father conducted his own investigation and found systematic embezzlement of company funds, falsification of documents, and double-entry bookkeeping." "That's ridiculous!" Lorraine couldn't take it anymore. "You don't have any proof." "On the contrary," I replied calmly, and nodded to Mr. Jennings, who began handing out folders of documents. "I have all the evidence my father collected, including bank statements showing the transfer of funds to offshore accounts controlled by Lorraine Kincaid." I spent the next 2 hours methodically presenting evidence, answering questions, and fending off Lorraine's attempts to discredit me. She tried to deny everything, then accused me of forging documents, and finally, in desperation, claimed I was acting out of jealousy and revenge. "Council members, my sister has been unstable since my father's death. She created this fantasy to hurt me and the company." "Fantasy?" I put the last trump card on the table, a thumb drive with a videotape. "It's a recording of my father talking to a bank director in the Cayman Islands. He got confirmation that the accounts were controlled by you. When the video ended, there was silence in the room. Lorraine turned pale. "I suggest we adjourn," Gerald Whitmore finally said. "The council needs to discuss what we have heard." Lorraine and I were asked to wait in the next room. As soon as the door closed, she turned to me, her face twisted with rage. "Are you satisfied?" she hissed. "You've ruined everything I've spent years building." "You ruined it, Lorraine," I said quietly, "with your greed and your lies. Don't you dare lecture me. You who always hid in your library while I did the real work. You have no idea what all this has cost me. You know what your problem is?" I looked her right in the eye. "You've always thought only of yourself. The company isn't a family legacy to you. It's just a source of money and power." She laughed, but there was no fun in that laugh. "Let's see how you feel when your new friends find out about your little secrets." I don't have secrets, Lorraine. Everybody has secrets, sister. And I know something about you. 40 minutes later, we were invited back into the hall. The faces of the board members were serious. Miss Lorraine Kincaid, Gerald began, the board has reviewed the evidence presented and finds it sufficiently compelling to suspend you as CFO until a full audit of the company is completed. We have also deemed it necessary to refer the material to law enforcement. Lorraine clenched her fists until her knuckles turned white. Miss Evelyn Kincaid, Gerald continued, according to your father's additional instructions, which Mr. Jennings gave us, you are appointed as a temporary member of the board of directors with the right to make decisions about the future of the company. I didn't see this coming. Thank you for your confidence. When the meeting was over, Lorraine looked across the room at me. There was pure hatred in her eyes. This isn't over, she said quietly as she walked past me toward the exit. I'll make sure everyone knows who you're really sleeping with in your little lake house. I didn't answer. Victory left a bitter taste. I didn't want a war with my sister, but she'd made her choice, and now we both had to live with the consequences. The next 3 weeks passed like a hurricane. After the board meeting, a full financial audit of the company was initiated. The results exceeded even the darkest expectations. Lorraine had taken nearly 20% of the assets out of the business over the past 5 years. I was not present at the meeting when Lorraine was presented with the final results of the audit. Mr. Jennings told me that she sat pale, with a straight back, not shedding a tear. She was offered 2 options: voluntarily return all assets and leave the company or face criminal prosecution. She chose the former. When the papers were signed and the accounts transferred back to the company, I expected to feel triumph, relief, even joy. Instead, a strange desolation came. I had won the battle, but the family had been destroyed utterly. What will you do now? Marcus asked when I told him the results. We sat on the veranda of his house, watching the sun set over the horizon of the lake. The view was a symbol of peace in the midst of the storm. I don't know, I answered honestly. The company is partly mine now, but I never wanted to be a businesswoman. What did you want to be? I wondered. All my life I'd tried so hard to conform to my father's expectations or avoid conflict with Lorraine that I'd almost forgotten what I wanted. To help children find themselves through creativity, I finally said. At the library, I've seen how they open up when they find the right book or activity. I've always dreamed of creating a place where kids could explore different kinds of art, literature, photography, drawing, music. So why not do it now? Marcus simply asked. The next day, I asked Jennings to set up a meeting with Lorraine. He tried to talk me out of it, but I was adamant. We needed to talk, one last time as sisters, not adversaries. We met at a restaurant on neutral ground. Lorraine looked drained, but still elegant in a slinky black dress. She sat across from me without extending her hand to greet me. What do you want, Evelyn? She asked coldly. To savor your victory? No, I shook my head. I want to offer you an alternative. She raised an eyebrow, waiting for me to continue. The board of directors has agreed to my proposal not to press criminal charges against you, I began. But there are conditions. What are they? First, you undergo a year of financial rehabilitation and psychotherapy. Second, you pay compensation, not to the company, but to a charitable foundation I'm setting up. Third, you work under supervision for the first 3 years. Supervised? She looked up in surprise. Are you suggesting I go back? Not to your old position, I clarified. But I know you're a talented marketer. The company could use your skills if you agree to play by the rules. Lorraine was silent for a long time, staring at her flawless fingernails. Why? She finally asked. After everything I've done, why are you giving me a second chance? Because you're my sister, I answered simply, and because I know what it's like to feel like you need to constantly prove your worth. Something resembling vulnerability flashed in her eyes for a moment, but she quickly resumed her cold mask. I'll think about your offer, she said, getting up from the table. But don't expect us to be one happy family again. I don't, I answered honestly. But maybe we can stop being enemies. 2 weeks later, Lorraine accepted my proposal. Our relationship remained strained, but there was a glimmer of hope for some kind of reconciliation in the future. Meanwhile, I began to realize my dream. I found a former art school building in the suburbs that was in need of renovation, but had a beautiful garden and large, bright rooms. With the help of Marcus, who turned out to be a talented restorer, we started to turn it into a creative development center for children. "What do you think?" he asked when we finished renovating the main hall. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, reflecting off the freshly painted walls. I imagined this room filled with children's voices, reading poetry, drawing, taking pictures, learning to see beauty in ordinary things. "It's perfect," I whispered, unable to hold back a smile. "You're perfect," Marcus said quietly, looking not at the room, but at me. In that moment, standing in the sunlight amidst the smell of fresh paint and wood, I felt for the first time that I was ready to open myself up to new possibilities, not only in my work, but in my personal life as well. My relationship with Marcus had been slow to develop. We both bore the scars of the past and were in no hurry to force things. He continued to work in his Pine Creek workshop, coming into town on weekends to help with the center. I divided my time between running the company, with the help of experienced managers my father trusted, and building the creative center. "How about we spend the weekend at the lake?" Marcus suggested one Friday night. "You look tired." He was right. I'd been working almost without rest for the past few months, diving headfirst into my new responsibilities. We left early in the morning and were at the summer house by noon. I noticed that Marcus had cleaned it up, fixed the porch steps, painted the shutters, cleared the path to the dock. "When did you do that?" I wondered. "Weekends," he shrugged. "This place is too beautiful to let it deteriorate." We spent the day walking along the lake shore and taking pictures. By evening, I felt the tension of the last few months slowly letting go. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked me as we sat by the fire, wrapped in our blankets. "About how things had changed," I answered, staring at the fire. "A year ago, I was a different person, a quiet, insecure person, hiding from conflict. And now? Now I finally feel like I'm living my life, not the life someone expects me to live." He gently took my hand, and this time I didn't pull away. The next morning, I woke up with a decision that had been maturing in me for a long time. After breakfast, I asked Marcus to take me to the cemetery. My father's grave looked well-maintained. Apparently, the gardener Jennings had hired had been doing a good job. I placed a bouquet of wildflowers I'd picked on the way to the headstone. "I found the truth, Daddy," I said quietly. "Not just about Lorraine, but about myself, about who I really am." The wind rustled in the trees, as if answering me. "You know, I've been mad at you for a long time," I continued, "for always preferring Lorraine, for not seeing the real me. But I realize now that you were trying to protect me in your own way, from disappointment, from pain, from a world that seemed too cruel for your youngest daughter." I paused, gathering my thoughts. "Thank you for your last gift. Not for the company or the money, but for the chance to find my voice and my power. I won't let you down." Marcus waited for me by the car, not interfering with my moment of goodbye. When I approached, he simply opened the door without asking anything. I appreciated that trait of his, the ability to give space without asking for explanations. On the drive back to town, I told him about my plans for the future, to expand the Art Center, to create a scholarship program for gifted children from low-income families, to organize a summer camp at the lake. "What about us?" he asked cautiously. "Do you have plans for that?" I smiled as I looked out the window at the fall scenery passing by. "I do. But it's not a 5-year business plan with clear goals and deadlines. It's more like a journey without a map, step by step." "I like that approach," he smiled back. "I'm in no hurry to get anywhere." The New Horizons. Children's Art Center opened 2 months later. The opening ceremony was attended by representatives of the local administration, journalists, future teachers, and of course, children with their parents. To my surprise, Lorraine came too. She kept to herself, but still came. When the official part was over, she came up to me. "Congratulations," she said discreetly. "Dad would be proud." "Thank you." I didn't know what else to say. "I started seeing a therapist like you suggested," Lorraine said suddenly. "Turns out I have a lot of problems. It was so unlike my self-assured sister that I didn't answer right away." We all have them, I said finally. The important thing is that you're working on them. She nodded, and after a moment's hesitation added, I don't know if I can ever earn your forgiveness, but I'll try not to be as much of a bitch as I used to be. That's a good start, I smiled weakly. After the center opened, life took on a new rhythm. I divided my time between business, which I gradually learned to understand and appreciate, and the creative center, which became my real passion. The children who came here reminded me of myself as a child, looking for their own way, their own voice, a place where they would be accepted for who they were. Marcus often came to help. He led master classes in woodworking, fixed anything that broke, took photos for our website. We took our time defining our relationship, just enjoying the opportunity to be around each other, getting to know each other, building trust, day after day, conversation after conversation. One evening, as we strolled through the park, I caught myself thinking that I was truly happy for the first time in a long time. Not that perfect happiness from romantic movies, but a quiet, deep sense of what was right. My life wasn't perfect. My relationship with Lorraine remained fragile. Running the company required skills I had yet to master. The center needed constant attention. But now I had the inner strength to meet these challenges. A strength that had always been in me, just waiting for the moment to manifest. And for this last gift, I was truly grateful to my father, who may have wanted this for me all along.
Любі глядачі, дякую вам за перегляд, ставте лайки та підписуйтесь на канал. Також напишіть в коментарях, чи погоджуєтесь ви з Дженніфер, чи вона мала розказати все матері, чи ні, чи мала все розказати своєму коханцю щодо свого чоловіка, чи ні. І також прокоментуйте, чи вам сподобалось це відео.